What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Young Guns podcast. We have a trade breakdown video for you today. We are one day post Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals, and what a Game 7 we had. Congratulations to the Florida Panthers on completing basically the revenge tour from what happened to them last season in the finals against Vegas. They were on the ropes. Listen, Edmonton, amazing the fact that they came back from 3 games down and almost brought it home. But nonetheless, Florida showed their resilience, and they really had a special group over there. And so, congratulations to them on completing their quest for the Stanley Cup, first time in franchise history. But mere minutes before that Stanley Cup final, Game 7, Don Sweeney and new GM of the Ottawa Senators, Steve Staios, had other plans. They wanted to steal the show. And Big Steve, what a masterclass he's put together. I have it. I'm on my X account right now. As announced by the Ottawa Senators last night, the Senators acquired goaltender Linus Ullmark from the Boston Bruins in exchange for Boston's original 2024 first-round pick that was swapped to Ottawa in the Alex DeBrincat deal, which 25th overall, Mark Kastelic, center, and the goaltender Joonas Korpisalo. In the process, Ottawa will be retaining 25% of his salary for the remaining 4 years of his contract. So, based on my initial reaction, I guess you guys could assume how I feel about this one. Being a Sens fan myself, I'm absolutely thrilled about this deal. Acquiring a starting goaltender for the Sens was one of the main areas of to tackle for them this offseason, and they've got a really good stabilizing option in Linus Ullmark. So let's start off by going through some of his numbers here on HockeyDB. So Linus Ullmark was a late pick in the 2012 draft. He's 30 years of age. He was drafted by the Buffalo Sabres, spent some seasons there, a good chunk of his career so far. And, if you look at his numbers, he's a consistent .915 save percentage kind of goalie. Basically, from Buffalo to Boston's, his numbers translated well. And he had a stellar 2022-2023 season with Boston, where he won the Vezina Trophy in a year where he himself registered 40 wins as a netminder. That is absolutely outstanding. And Boston that year broke the regular season record for amount of wins in an 82-game season. He was fantastic, lights out that year. This past season, he split the games with Jeremy Swayman with a .915 save percentage, still very respectable, and he is in that class, let's say, top 10 goalies in the NHL currently. But Boston, a team with the luxury of having 2 great starting goaltenders this year, one being Jeremy Swayman and the other Linus Ullmark, had to move off of one. Jeremy Swayman, he's an RFA this summer, and he was, excuse me about this ad. Give me a second here. Well, Jeremy Swayman was their guy this year. So, Swayman had the upper hand in the regular season. They both had great years. Don't get me wrong, and they really elevated the Bruins game. But in the playoffs, Jeremy Swayman was the guy from Game 1 against Toronto. He's the goaltender who completed that series for them, and he carried on his form into the series against Florida, where they lost to the eventual Stanley Cup champions. But he's an RFA this year, and big salary on the forefront potentially, and they had to move Linus Ullmark because Linus Ullmark, as we know, is due for an extension next season. So they don't want to be paying their goaltenders that much, but they have acquired Joonas Korpisalo in the process. As we see over here, they'll be paying out $3 million annually for the next 4 years, where you see my cursor for Joonas. And that's what's head scratching, I feel, for Boston fans. And it really is, because Joonas Korpisalo didn't have a good year by any accounts last year with the Sens. I watched most of the Sens games, I could tell you that he was pretty awful. He was pretty awful at times. But he's a goaltender that I also think that there was too much to be expected from him, because he had never um, obtained the role of a clear cut starter. Well, in Columbus, there were seasons where he was relied on to be that guy, but because of injury, he's never got to play at least 40 games, except for this past year in Ottawa where he played 55. But that was just a role not suited for him, mixed on the fact that he was on a team with bad team defense. Things started off pretty shaky out of the gate with Coach DJ Smith as well before he got fired. But you could only base it off of what you could control as a player, and Joonas Korpisalo wasn't making the saves when he needed to make them. Considering the fact that there were high hopes coming out of the season he had collectively with Columbus and Los Angeles the year prior. They had signed him on a 5-year deal as a free agent, hoping that they could finally get their starter in net. And things just didn't work out. And for both parties, the Sens and Korpisalo, the best move was to move him out of town. But nonetheless, he's got a new opportunity with the Boston Bruins, be their backup goaltender this year. A little expensive for a backup, but I think that's a role more suited for him, and I wouldn't be surprised that if he has a bounce back year this season. And so let's break down. So Boston has got 21 million currently, about 21 and a half in cap space. They got their first round pick back right over here. And they've got some guys to bring back this offseason, that's for sure. Some of the notable names, there are Jeremy Swayman, like I mentioned. You got Matt Grzelcyk, who is potentially going to be hitting unrestricted years. Basically, all their forward depth is going to be hitting the unrestricted market, but they're a team that is going to be using this extra salary space that they have. They want to acquire another difference maker out forward, potentially a top 6 forward, because if we evaluate them based on how they fared in the playoffs, they needed secondary scoring beyond Pasternak and Marchand, and was a story for the regular season as well. They had to those two prolific wingers had to really carry a load for them, and they're going to need support, potentially at center. Clearly, if this team is going to want to compete again next season, and really get themselves in a position where they could basically be in a better place to compete for the Stanley Cup next year. Moving things back to Ottawa, let's take a look at how this is all going to fare on Ottawa's salary cap. Well, they have $1 million in dead money for the next 4 seasons, with 25% of the Korpisalo salary being retained by them. Obviously, Josh Norris was here on injured reserve, but that doesn't count on the cap right now. So Linus Ullmark is on the last year of his $5 million annual deal. Extension talks with him have started, from what I heard. There were some rumblings on the Twitter boards that before July 1st the extension could happen, and I think part of the the who won the trade will be very, very much related to if Linus Ullmark is going to sign an extension with the Sens. A lot is indicating that it will happen, but that is the reason why the return was what it was, that Ottawa gave away the first round pick, is that you hope to re-sign Ullmark and for him to be the face of their goaltending position moving forward. Let's go back to the Twitter boards over here. So yes, Jay Fresh, we love Jay Fresh. Linus Ullmark's expected save percentage in 2023-24 was not 90.3%. Korpisalo's was 90%. So that's based off of the team's play and the savability of the shots contested based on NHL averages and such. And so this is and he's so Jay Fresh is indicating that Boston's team defense was getting bailed by their goaltending, not the other way around. So Boston had two great goaltenders last season, and Ullmark and Swayman really were punching above value for them and really added to the overall team performance. The iconic Swayman Ullmark celebration. Well, that is in fact a farewell for the Bruins. They won't be able to do that anymore. Per Joe Haggerty, he believes Otto was on the Ullmark's no trade list, but not wanting to be a backup in Boston, along with a conversation with Daniel Alfredsson sold him on waiving for the Sens. Well, it is confirmed that when he signed this deal, Ottawa was initially on the no trade list, on the 15-team no trade list that he had. And that in fact, well, for this trade to happen, maybe this is why we had such a delay, because from the beginning of the non-playoff teams and then Boston's offseason, those talks of Ullmark getting traded were already in the air. And the deal has happened now. Yes, before the draft. The draft is in a couple of days, and the deal has already happened. But Linus Ullmark did in fact have to waive his no trade clause. And it's interesting that Daniel Alfredsson, who's now going to be returning, obviously franchise legend, is going to be returning as an assistant coach for the Sens. It's very interesting that the kind of mark that he leaves on players, not only on the players on the Sens and how he helps them out at practice, and how they credit him for a lot of his, they pick him on his brain on to get a lot of his wisdom, and the players love him. He's been around the team for years now. He's just in a position where he gets to actually be completely hands-on as an assistant coach. It's very interesting the kind of impact that he's had for the organization within, and now being able to help recruit Linus Ullmark and basically sell him on the project at hand in Ottawa, because Ottawa is a club, they haven't made the playoffs in the last 7 years, and Ottawa fans like myself, the organization, have been pushing the message for the past 2 years that they've been a playoff team when they haven't been. Fans are getting impatient. They have a great young core of players that are ready to take the next step, but they needed a starting goaltender, and this is exactly what they got in Linus Ullmark. Linus Ullmark has been traded to Otto. I don't know if you guys are going to get it. Basically, I think it's from the show The Bear. So he's saying STFU. So I guess this is an unhappy, an unhappy Bruins fan. Just so this is quite funny. So Brady Tkachuk had a reaction with his brother winning the Stanley Cup naturally yesterday, and the beauty of the internet, they just found out about the Ullmark trade, so how it's going to save Brady's season potentially, and the family hugging it out. Brady emotional. That's quite funny. But enough of these little distractions. Let's go back to the trade itself, and some of like the components on which I could break down on. We have their player scorecards now by Jay Fresh as well. He posted these right before the Stanley Cup final game. So if you look at all of these categories here, I'm going to make it bigger on my screen. If you look at Linus Ullmark, these were his numbers last year, based, his metrics based on different game situations and how he's been compared to other to his peers, and how he's elevated his play. So here, there's a lot of blue here. There's a lot of high end production and a lot of these categories here. I'll let you guys break these down on your own. It's not very similar from Joonas Korpisalo's side. Like I said, he had a very shaky year last year. Um, but the thing with Korpisalo is that stylistically, you look at a guy with his size and his style, and you think, well, this guy has the upside. And you see him on a good day, you think, well, this if he's could maintain this level of consistency, and the way he could steal a game occasionally, and the way he could really dominate in the net based on his technical ability and his size and net. You'd think that this guy, he's a diamond in the rough, but he hasn't. He's now 30 years of age. He hasn't done it consistently. Yes, injuries did hamper his time in Columbus, but going to Ottawa to be their clear cut starter, that was the big move for him. I don't know if it was the pressure related to it, or the fact, he was in a tough situation in Ottawa. It's always a tough situation for goalies. Look at Matt Murray, look at Cam Talbot. Um, the recent acquisitions, I feel like I'm missing one here. But anyway, since Craig Anderson, this franchise has not been able to have a stable goaltender. Granted, it was a bad situation for a couple of years with DJ Smith and how that team was doing. But this past season, I think a lot of it, unfortunately, has to go on Joonas Korpisalo's individual play, because they really expected better from him. And I think with a stable goaltender last season, they would have been in that playoff mix for sure. That's no bias, right? It was a team that was able to score goals, that was really playing structured once Jacques Martin came in. Good enough roster to make the playoffs, but the big question mark was at goaltending, and it was a good question mark indeed. So for the Sens moving forward, Shane Pinto was obviously an RFA this summer. There were rumblings that he would maybe been in the Ullmark deal, as well as him or either Jacob Chikrin, who's expiring in a year. That didn't happen. I really didn't believe that was going to happen, um, just based on the fact that if so, Linus Ullmark has his value as a player. Granted, he had a no move clause, which hampers his trade value. And based on the fact that, yes, he's a goaltender who won the Vezina 2 years ago, but great goaltender, but he had also just a year left on his deal, so that plays a fact into his trade value. And the rumors that it was going to be Ottawa's 7th overall pick plus Jacob Chikrin and maybe a little bit more for Mark, that was just completely ridiculous. So I'll bring it down to this now. Who won this trade? I absolutely think that the Sens, Steve Stales nailed this one in the park. Upgraded a position of need, somehow got rid of the Korpisalo contract. Didn't have to give away the 7th overall pick, is giving away the 25th overall pick in this year's draft. That's a big win for them because of the rumors and the prior asking prices, like I mentioned. And for Boston, it's kind of, they're shedding. They had to get rid of Ullmark, right? Because they didn't want to pay 2 goaltenders, but they're taking on Korpisalo's contract that even with the cap that it is at 3 now for the next 4 years to be your backup, that's not ideal. They didn't really get much else in the deal. Yes, the first round pick, which was theirs originally, but Mark Kastelic is, he's a bona fide fourth line center. Not that much skill, kind of a gritty center who could play on your penalty kill. Let me just pull up his hockey DB. So yeah, 10 points in 63 games this year, was a -5. 11 points in 65 games the year prior. Spent a little bit of time in DA. He is a bottom 6 forward through and through. He's somebody who's not scared to fight. But he's not going to do the team any favors in their top nine. He's not really the asset that I think Boston fans were hoping for. So let me wrap it up by that. I think Steve Staios really hit a slam dunk in his second trade as general manager of the Sens. Head scratching move by Don Sweeney, but the Bruins do have the cap space to add in this offseason. They had to get rid of Ullmark, so they did just that. But the Sens fans like myself are very happy with Linus Ullmark, and we're excited to see how he's going to fare in this coming NHL season. So guys, we have a mock trade video, like I mentioned in the previous videos, that'll be dropping soon. So guys, stay tuned for that. July 1st free agency is around the corner as well. We'll have a bunch of content for free agency. This has been Zach from the Young Guns podcast. Follow us on all of our social medias, and let's wrap things up here. Peace.